Welcome to the Dep Dive. This week, we're really digging into a collection of stories, quite fascinating, really, that give us a snapshot of some major discussions happening right now in Southern California and, well, beyond too.
Yeah, all our material today is pulled from the Observer Group newspapers of Southern California, dated May 7th, 2025. And we're looking at this interesting intersection of, economic action, political futures, and these really vital healthcare debates.
Exactly. We've pinpointed four key stories we think offer some great insight. We'll explore the whole situation around the Target boycott, some surprising effects there.
Right, and also former Vice President Harris's first big speech since the election, a very powerful address.
Then there's a community rally, a really passionate one, against proposed Medicaid cuts.
And finally, we'll look at how the California Black Caucus is tackling historical harms with new legislation that really engages with the current federal direction, sometimes clashing with it.
Okay, so let's dive right in with these Target boycotts. Where did this all start?
Well, it kicked off as a nationwide reaction, really, to Target deciding to stop its DEI initiatives, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs.
Right, the program is meant to, boost representation and fairness inside the company.
Exactly. And we saw some direct action, like a small protest in D.C. back in April. It was part of a three-day economic blackout, basically urging Black and Hispanic shoppers to stay away from Target.
And who was behind this push?
Some prominent figures, spiritual leaders, community leaders, Pastor Jamal Bryant, for instance, even called for a 40-day fast from shopping at Target. The main idea was to use the Black community's economic clout, their spending power, to demand respect, equity, representation.
Okay, so the goal was clear leverage economic power.
Yes, but what's immediately striking here is just how tricky it is to apply these broad economic actions to really complex systems. The intention is one thing.
But the reality.
The reality, as these reports highlight, is proving much more complicated. The consequences aren't always lining up neatly with those initial aims.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting. The articles point out some, let's say, unintended negative impacts, especially within the Black community.
Like what?
Well, Tabitha Brown, she's had successful product lines with Target. Back in January 2025, she did a live stream expressing some real concerns.
Concerns about the boycott.
Yeah, about the long-term effects on Black-owned businesses. She talked about how hard it actually is for them to just pull products off shelves at major retailers like Target. There are logistics, storage issues, sales channels. It's not simple.
That really highlights the practical challenge, doesn't it? It's not just consumers choosing differently. There are supply chains, distribution networks. It hits smaller businesses hard. Her
Yeah.
point about storage and needing other sales outlets, that really hits home about the real-world difficulties.
And it's not well the business owners. We're also hearing reports about Target employees facing reduced hours, maybe even layoffs in some places.
And disproportionately affecting Black workers.
Seems so. There's a quote from an anonymous Target worker in D.C. saying, "We can't say we are uplifting the Black dollar and impoverishing working class people at the same time." That really brings a human cost into focus.
It absolutely does. It shows how interconnected everything is. Boycotts aimed at corporate policy can end up hurting individuals in the very community they're trying to support. It forces you to consider the whole spectrum of consequences,
We also heard from shoppers, African American shoppers, who support the boycott's goals in principle.
but face challenges.
Exactly. Financial realities. Things like paying separate shipping costs if they buy from multiple independent Black-owned vendors online instead of one trip to Target. Or losing out on Target sales and specials. These are real concerns for families on tight budgets.
That speaks volumes about economic constraints. Convenience, affordability for any night. Those are still huge factors for many people, even if they want to support Black-owned businesses. It suggests maybe we need, I don't know, more targeted approaches to economic protests so you don't unintentionally create more hardship.
Then there's Richard B. Lewis. His take is interesting. He supports boycotts conceptually, but stresses the need for internal focus, collective action within the Black community as the key to lasting change.
That's a valuable perspective. Sort of a counterpoint, external pressure needs to be matched by building stronger internal economic structures, strengthening from within, like you said.
And what about the street vendors near that DC Target?
Ah, yes. Mostly Black and Hispanic vendors. They rely heavily on the foot traffic Target brings in, even shoppers not initially planning to buy from them. They're worried. worried that sustained boycotts could really damage their own small businesses.
That's a ripple effect you might not immediately think about. These large stores anchor local economies in complex ways.
Absolutely. Small vendors often piggyback on the customer flow. So a boycott targeting the big store can hurt businesses not even directly involved.
And Tabitha Brown also warned about something else, long-term shelf space.
What was her concern there?
She worried that if sales of Black-owned brands drop at places like Target and Walmart because of boycotts, the retailers might just stop carrying them altogether.
Oof. Leading to potentially a less diverse retail environment.
Exactly. A whitewashed environment, as she put it. After years of fighting for that representation. That's a sobering thought.
It really is. It shows how fragile some of these gains in diversifying retail might be. Short-term actions, even well-intentioned ones, could potentially reverse progress.
Okay, let's shift gears. Our next story takes us over to San Francisco. Former Vice President Kamala Harris gave her first major public speech since the 2024 election loss.
Right, this was the 20th anniversary Gala for Emerge. That's the organization that trains Democratic women to run for office. Happened April 30th.
And the reports say it was a pretty powerful speech, a call to action.
Definitely. The article describes a speech deeply concerned about the current political climate. Harris framed this moment as the realization of an undesirable vision for America. She specifically talked about checks and balances buckling, the potential for a constitutional crisis if, different branches of government fail or are defied by the president.
Yeah.
Serious concerns.
Did she talk about Emerge itself?
Oh, yes. High praise. She highlighted their impact training over 6,500 Democratic women since 2002. And get this, over 1,200 Emerge alumni are currently serving in government.
Wow, it's substantial.
It really shows the role organizations like Emerge play in shaping political leadership. Her praise underlined the importance of, dedicated efforts to get more women into leadership roles.
And it wasn't just looking back, right? She urged action.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A strong call for continued organizing, mobilizing, running for office, emphasizing solidarity, resilience. And the Emerge CEO, Ashanti F. Golar, committed to developing new training strategies.
Strategies aimed at what?
Specifically designed to empower candidates and effectively counter policies coming from the Trump administration. So a proactive, forward-looking stance.
It's adapting to the current political environment.
Precisely. Acknowledging challenges, but focusing on active engagement and strategic responses.
Harris also apparently made a point of recognizing other Democratic leaders.
Yeah.
Across the spectrum.
Yes, she mentioned people like Cory Booker, Chris Van Hollen, Chris Murphy, Jasmine Crockett, Maxwell Frost, AOC, even Bernie Sanders.
Interesting. A deliberate show of unity, perhaps.
It could be seen that way.
Yeah.
A conscious effort maybe to acknowledge the different voices within the party, project a broader coalition image going forward.
Now, here's a California angle that caught my eye. The article mentions chatter among political insiders in Sacramento.
But a potential run for governor.
Exactly. Especially with Governor Newsom being term limited. And there was a recent poll.
Yeah, a Politica UC Berkeley poll. It showed significant support among registered Democrats for a potential Harris gubernatorial bid. Like 33% said they'd be joyful, 41% mostly excited, very low negative sentiment.
So while she's addressing national themes, this potential local run adds another layer, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It fuels speculation about her next moves within California politics. And that poll data certainly makes a run seem, plausible.
Okay, let's turn our focus now to a really critical local issue down in Bakersfield. This community rally to propose Medicaid cuts.
Right. Held at the Bakersfield American Indian Health Project on April 30th. The goal was crystal clear. Push back against potential cuts and show the impact on vulnerable people, especially as Congress is debating healthcare funding.
This really brings home the human side of those federal policy decisions, doesn't it?
It really does. The rally brought together such a diverse group, all worried about losing essential healthcare.
Sandy Close from American Community Media opened it up. She stressed how critical their District 22 representatives' vote is, given how many people there rely on Medicaid.
High enrollment area.
And she drew a parallel to Senator John McCain's famous vote on the Affordable Care Act, highlighting how one vote can really change everything in healthcare policy.
That's a powerful framing. It connects the local fight to the national stage and reminds everyone of the weight each representative carries. Also hints at the potential for bipartisan impact.
And the personal stories shared were incredibly moving. Tara Gray, from the Bakersfield American Indian Health Project.
What did she emphasize?
Just how vital their clinic is, how devastating funding loss would be, limiting access, making people travel further, compromising their ability to offer culturally sensitive preventative care.
That's crucial. It shows the direct impact on frontline providers and the specific needs of the populations they serve. That cultural competence piece is so important.
Then Joy Doctor from the Western Center on Law and Poverty gave the statewide view.
And her outlook.
Pretty dire,
Yep.
warning that cuts could push families into poverty, create chaos in the healthcare system, especially in places like District 22, where she said over 65% rely on Medicaid.
Wow, over 65%. That paints a stark picture of the potential systemic impact, not just individuals, but the whole healthcare infrastructure.
Then we heard from Ulysses Hernandez, a person living with disabilities.
His testimony must have been powerful.
Incredibly, he spoke so personally about relying on Medicaid for aids, therapies, things essential for his independence, his quality of life. His vulnerability really underscored what's at stake.
It's a potent reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
These debates aren't abstract. They have profound, real-life consequences for people's dignity and independence.
We also heard from Defton Newton. He's a father and also a veteran EMT.
So he has multiple perspectives.
Right. He shared his family's experience caring for his son, who has a severe spinal cord defect. The emotional strain, the financial strain, Medicaid cuts would just make it worse. And he asked this really pointed question.
Which was?
Basically, do the people making these budget decisions truly understand the impossible choices families like his would face? It was incredibly impactful.
Coming from a caregiver and a healthcare professional, that offers such unique insight into the human cost. It challenges the abstract nature of budget talks.
Dee Slade from the African American Network of Kern County brought in historical context.
Connecting it to civil rights.
Exactly. Linking healthcare access to the long civil rights struggle, reminding people that Medicare and Medicaid were hard-won victories. And she urged everyone to directly lobby their congressman, David Valadao.
That connection to history is powerful. Framing healthcare as a fundamental right fought for over generations. And her call to action empowers people to engage directly.
Reina Alaguez from South Kern Sol and Building Healthy Communities, Kern tied Medicaid to broader inequalities in Kern County,
How so?
pointing out that rural and immigrant communities already face huge healthcare challenges. She even shared heartbreaking personal stories of people lost due to lack of access.
That highlights the intersectionality, doesn't it? How healthcare access overlaps with other social and economic inequalities, hitting marginalized communities hardest.
And Angel Galvez, also from the Bakersfield American Indian Health Project, spoke very personally, too, about generational sacrifices by working-class families, their ongoing contribution.
Urging the congressman.
To listen, to really listen to the community and ensure quality care for all kids. A very direct, emotional appeal about representation and responsibility.
It underscores the duty of elected officials to hear their constituents, especially the most vulnerable.
Finally, Joy Doctor gave an update on the congressional timeline. Key committee meetings were starting, like right now, this week. Intense negotiations expected through the summer.
So the timing is critical.
Very. Budget resolutions expected before the August recess. It really emphasized the urgency for people to make their voices heard now.
That provides a clear window for action. Decisions are being made very soon, making constituent involvement potentially really impactful.
Okay, our final story tonight looks at 4 specific bills from the California Legislative Black Caucus, part of their Road to Repair 2025 priority bill package.
And the main goal of this package.
It's a big one, to address the generational harms of slavery. And what's interesting is how these bills intersect and sometimes conflict with the Trump administration's agenda.
Right. Highlighting that dynamic between state efforts and federal policy direction. The CLBC is pushing forward on things like DEI and racial equity in ways that contrast sharply with the current federal stance.
Let's break them down. First, Assembly Bill 766 from Assemblymember Lashai Sharp Collins.
What does that one do?
It would require all state executive branch agencies to conduct regular racial equity analyses and develop programs to actively advance racial equity. Sharp Collins specifically framed it as defending DEI in California.
So embedding racial equity into the process.
Yeah, mandating these analyses by appointed DEI officers before budgets get implemented or new regulations are enacted. It passed appropriations but got re-referred for more review.
Okay, so a clear state-level commitment to integrate equity considerations directly into how government operates, formalizing it across agencies.
Next, Assembly Bill 475 from Assemblymember Lori Wilson. This one focuses on the prison system, CDCR.
And the issue here,
Inmate labor. It requires CDCR to develop voluntary work programs. This aligns with Wilson's advocacy against forced labor. It would replace the current requirement for all able-bodied inmates to work.
With voluntary programs.
Yes, and it sets rules for these voluntary assignments, including wages, not just in state prisons, but also county and city jails. It passed appropriations, but it's in the suspense file now, meaning they're looking closely at the cost.
That's a significant shift, isn't it? From mandatory labor to a voluntary system with regulated wages, a different philosophy about inmate rights and opportunities.
Then there's Senate Bill 510 from Senator Laura Richardson. This deals with K-12 education,
What's the focus?
requiring a complete and accurate curriculum about racial disparities, specifically including the impacts of slavery, segregation, systemic discrimination. Richardson said the goal is ensuring students learn accurate history about African Americans.
Similar to other efforts to ensure accurate historical teaching.
Yeah, it echoes a 2024 bill about teaching the history of Native Americans during the Mission and Gold Rush periods. This one's currently with the Senate Appropriations Committee.
So, pushing for a more comprehensive, truthful understanding of the past in schools, countering potential efforts to downplay or ignore those parts of history.
And the last one, Assembly Bill 742 from Assemblymember Said Elowary. This one's about professional licenses.
How so?
It proposes designating descendants of American chattel slavery for priority when the state issues professional licenses.
Priority. How would that work?
Well, it connects to another proposed bill, SB 518, which would create a bureau for descendants of American slavery to verify lineage, potentially for reparations programs. AB 742 would then give priority for licenses to people verified by that bureau.
Aiming to create economic opportunity.
Exactly. Elowary linked it directly to restorative justice and wellness equity. It passed the Judiciary Committee and is now also in Assembly Appropriations.
Interesting. That directly targets lasting economic disparities linked to slavery by creating pathways to professional careers. Using that proposed bureau provides a mechanism. It's a tangible step towards restorative justice ideas.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear we've covered a lot of really significant ground today.
Absolutely. We've looked at the complexities of economic boycotts, those ripple effects. We heard the post-election reflections from a major national figure.
Saw that passionate community fight for healthcare access.
And explored these state legislative efforts trying to grapple with the long legacy of historical injustice.
I think the key takeaway for you listening is seeing how these different stories, they might seem separate, but they're really interconnected threads, all part of this larger ongoing conversation about equity, about representation, about the basic well-being of our communities.
Yeah, we've seen how economic actions can have both intended and, well, unintended results. We've seen the absolutely vital role individuals and communities play in pushing for change, and how history continues to shape today's policies and debates.
So here's something to think about as you reflect on all this. A provocative thought, maybe. In your view, what do you think is the most critical lever for creating real, sustainable, positive change in society?
Is it primarily economic power, consumer choices? Is it political engagement, voting, running for office?
Or is it community mobilization, that grassroots action we saw? Or maybe it's through legislation, carefully crafting those laws.
And maybe the bigger question is, how can all these different forces, economic, political, community, legislative, how can they work together most effectively? How do we harness all of them to build a more just, a more equitable future for everyone? Something to definitely mull over.